Howdy. Something on my screen. Sun's out. I like to make videos outside more. That's when it seems to feel like something that would be interesting to do. But when it's not sunny, I'm a little challenged. But anyway, it's been a couple of weeks for sure. I've definitely experienced a few more peaks and valleys, and I understand why. I mean, I see it, I get it. It's been very, very, very interesting. Very fruitful. You know, there's so many times that you think that, I don't know, it's not the I get it thing, but there's just, I don't know, I just realized over the last few weeks there were areas that I was still grabbing certainty and didn't realize it. And then they snuck around and shown differently. It's just so insidious, but it's because it's baked in so deeply, so, gosh, for years and years and years. I mean, it's so conditioned, and there's nothing that can even describe the level of conditioning and how, you want to say it's in every cell of your being, and there's just so much of it. I mean, the magic is being aware of that and not just being that, a product of that, but actually seeing, even though you experience the feelings and sensations, but just, being aware that you're more than that still, even in the midst of it. And that's magic. And I was sharing last night, like, even in some times when there's a lot processing, I actually sad cried a few nights ago, and I haven't done that in a long time. I cry a lot, but it's not sad. But I was a little sad, or I felt sadness. Try to stop saying I was or I am a certain thing, because I'm not sad. I am not sad, but I felt sad, and I expressed it. But it was fun. I mean, it was actually great. Or, maybe I had a little bit of at the time, but I still was okay. I knew what was going on to some extent. You don't always know what's processing unless you're putting effortful mind. You're putting effort with your mind on it, which is pointless. I was doing that. I was telling myself I wasn't doing that, but I was doing that. I still have some episodes, of course, like I know we all do. And I had one this week where I was pretty emotional and reactionary. I knew it was happening, but I had a little story about it. And the story that I was telling myself, was relating all of the things from my childhood and my past that I was like, well, this is why I have this and blah, blah, and this is where this comes from, and y'all just have to process this. And I was just kind of, I didn't realize it because I was explaining it to myself. And then I told myself, well, I'm not going to think about it and try to figure it out. I've just got to let it happen and see what happens, which is great. But I still had a story behind it because I was giving a reason for why those feelings were happening. And the insight that I have, and I know there may be some differing thoughts on this. It's hard not to laugh sometimes saying the word thought, but anyway. is about shadow work and things. I think, for me, it's one thing I know, and I've clicked with me early on, is that I know, even though I still do it sometimes, I know that I will not manually think my way through anything. But it still happens. But anyway, I got a little lost. But anyway, I was telling myself that with the, where this stems from, and that all goes around to kind of the idea of shadow work and the past and childhood trauma and those things, which is, I get all of that. And I get that I get that in situations that there are situations where someone feels they must go through all of those details and work through that, and that's fine. I don't necessarily, or I have not felt that way. I still don't feel that way. But the interesting, you can, it's not going to hurt anything. It's just a side trip. It's not necessary at all. It's not necessary because there is nothing necessary for this realization. Not one thing, not qualification, nothing. Any person can have it right now without digging through anything in their past or whatnot. It's just all those things are so baked in, it absolutely seems impossible to do so. And those things come up and you have to see them often. It's a very interesting situation because you still not doing some kind of focused work on it isn't going to make it vanish. The sensations and traces and echoes of that pain and suffering and those things are still going to work their way out. But what I'm saying is it's not necessary to put effort behind that, and it's not a prerequisite, and it's not a course, and it's not a number of steps that have to be manually done. And it also, as it works itself out and processes itself, there's nothing waiting for that to happen that's not available. It is. But so, but even though I haven't made, these manual efforts to dig through my childhood, there's been many points where those things have popped up in an insight or that type of situation, and I've seen a connection. But what I really got this week is that I had settled on the fact that there was a concrete, real connection between the feelings that I feel or the sensations that I detect when these episodes where I get I guess we'll just say a little bit pulled back in. And I was explaining them away with referring to my childhood. I'm going to sneeze. Pardon me. But I was still explaining it away to myself with a story. Sure, there's events that occurred that I have memories that are based on. But what I've gotten is that, one, we know the past doesn't exist. All that it is in this moment. But this has been clarified just a bit for me. Whatever happened, or let's say the suffering, pain, or whatever we want to call it, or this typical scenario I had kind of grouped it under an explanation based on my childhood. There are physical sensations that accompany that I then mentally apply these, the stories and the reasoning to, and then allow myself to react sometimes based on that. And explaining it away as just, part of the process. And in some senses it is. But I detected that I still had this idea that, let's say, for example, I walked into the situation I was in the other day and I had felt fine before. And the events in the situation in that moment that were occurring, I felt this pit in my stomach or my chest, and it felt like, and I associated it with that theme of that I mentioned of stemming from childhood this and conditioning that, and people were mean to me this and that, and I did that so quickly, like it was instantaneous with the sensation. So although I did not think that I was making up a story afterwards, the story was already applied at that moment, and I didn't see that. I saw my reactions. I knew that I was acting irrationally. I knew what I was doing, but I immediately really delegated it to that concept of childhood trauma. But I was watching someone last night speak, and as is always now, it seems, so many things just happen in perfect concert. Synchronicity is very obvious on a daily basis. And so I sat there finishing a pizza before my shower, and I had turned the heat on, and I just hit enter on a video that was 19 minutes. Had no intention of watching it all. It was just some noise while I was eating my pizza. Well, it was also someone I enjoy watching, but I didn't expect anything. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just chilling. And oh yeah, of course he might as well have called me on the phone and said my name first, or Mark, before the speaking started. And what became very clear to me, which led me to watching it over and over several times in a row and not taking a shower for an hour and a half, was that the only connection that's there, or that I'm saying is there, sure, it makes sense, sure, I can make it make sense, sure, we'll all understand it, sure, we all have similar things that cause similar things, but all of that is still a story. Every single bit. I realize that once I feel that pit in my chest, or that feeling, or that odd sensation in my body that immediately sends me into an insecure tantrum, which is basically what I'll call it. It's that good habit that I've had. Is that I don't need to apply anything to it. I don't need to reason it away. I don't even need to give that explanation. Even in thinking through it, it's like, perhaps those sensations that seem to be similar over time, that that perhaps originated from an earlier experience. We have, language is language, but in an earlier experience, the story itself didn't cause that impression on the body. A lot of things led to that, a combination of everything, just like everything. There is no one cause for anything. There's no one result for anything. There's no one purpose for anything, because everything's connected so many ways. In any event, whatever happened in the quote-unquote past, there is no accurate representation or memory or recreation or anything of any past event ever. That is not possible. Beyond the moment of those events, when they happened and as they happened, any real recollection, description, anything else ever will never, ever capture what really, quote unquote, happened. Because it's just not possible. There's no way for the mind to recreate anything to represent 100% what that moment was and everything associated with it. I mean, you can't even try, or you need not try. And it's important to realize that your memories are not correct. Now, I don't mean that if you remember I remember lots of times I felt bad and was abused and people hurt me. But I still, it serves no purpose to dissect those, because it's still not 100% accurate. And there's no way it can be, and there's no purpose. Any effort at that is a story, or an attempt to relive a story, or an attempt to make a story, or an attempt to edit it, or attempt to use it to explain something else, which will require manipulation. And it's just not possible. The mind can't do it otherwise. It's just what it does. So, although there may be a physical echo that, as long as I fall prey to those stories, that physical echo or sensation may be noted or felt, that still doesn't mean there's a concrete connection. There's not a connection unless you make or allow or continue one. Nothing lingers, nothing persists, nothing is carried over from moment to moment. And anything that does, you brought with you. You created it yourself. You recreated it yourself every single time. And I know that. So my perspective shifted a lot. The sensation scares me. The mind immediately applies the same old label it always has. And then I think I'm cutting it short by not thinking about it as much. But I've already told myself the story, and I've actually used that story. I've actually used that story to justify what I'm doing and to justify my reactions. And then I'm saying, well, you don't have to mess with that right now. It'll work itself out, which everything does. But I was still using it as an excuse. I was still hiding with it. I was still allowing reactions based on it, reactivity. And I didn't realize it. And it's been a year, and I've been able to let go of a lot. But yeah, you don't know it's there, and it's there. And I was even, to me now, obviously doing it, but it wasn't obvious until last night. So now I get to see what it's going to be like to be, or we'll see, but whatever happens, but that I can really drop it. The explanation, the relation back, the meaning that I'm giving it, because that's all it is. And one of the biggest shifts I've ever had was, and it was very, very intense, was realizing that nothing has any inherent meaning at all. Zero, zilch, nothing has meaning until we apply it. Ever. Which is a huge gift. But anything that has meaning to you is meaning you've given to it. Which means you can change it. You can remove it. You can ignore it. Because it's not based on anything. You're making the connections. You're making the stories. Even when you don't think you are, you can be. Most likely are. I may not have said that a week ago, but I'll say it now. I was making a lot of stories. I thought I'm still making a lot less, but I was making more than I thought I was. When that pit comes in my chest, nothing else needs to be done but this to keep going and allow it. The instantaneous little connection and explanation that was happening immediately is what led to the reactivity and everything else, and me excusing it, me putting it off, me allowing it, me giving myself excuses for it, me telling myself that I was acknowledging something and allowing it when I was still doing a story. It's just so... And what a fucking gift that is. Because I'm fucking tired of it. I mean, I've dropped so much of the less than story. But to be able to drop that or see a new insight about it, a new perspective, God, you know, these major perspective shifts just change who you are. It changes everything every time it happens. And you look back and you can't remember who that was. I don't know who I was on Monday. I was not here. I was not this one. I had so many thoughts that day. Because I went on a train ride. A thought train ride. And allowing those feelings is just noticing them being there, and that's fine. It stops there. Nothing else. No story, no connection to shadow work, no description of this, that, and the other. And again, I'm not saying any of those things are things that I'm not telling anyone not to do anything. I'm not saying there are any errors. I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying is, I do know that it is still all stories. What is sensations, echoes of, feelings and such in the body, they're separate. And separate's not a good word, but they're not connected to anything your mind's going to come up with. And they're not contingent. And there's nothing in the past you have to dig through, necessary to dig through to deal with it or get past it. Language is hard. But I hope it makes some sense. This was a big one. And for me, I might say it might be the third biggest in a year as far as a shift in perspective. And I'm so excited about it because I really needed it. I've been working on that. I think I've been efforting a bit at trying to not have those episodes and trying to do better. And I was, but I wasn't solving anything. I wasn't doing anything. I was busy with stories and giving myself permission to play it out, which is fun. But you know what? It wasn't fun. I wasn't enjoying it. It wasn't my highest joy. Although in a way this whole process is. It really is. But I'm just saying those times when I'm reactionary and act weird and rude and mad and passive aggressive and those things, there's nothing fruitful in that. But trying not to do it when there's still stories running behind it and using those stories, that whole thing was getting me nowhere. Except it got me here to realizing something else. So that's why today I was talking with my friend here that those times when It feels like a backtrack, which is impossible. It feels like a dark night. It feels like something. What I've seen over the past year is that's not any, well, of course, it's definitely not any type of failure or wrong thing or something that shouldn't happen on anybody's part. There's nothing to judge about it at all. But it does seem, at least in my experience, that when those things, I experience those things, that unless I run away or explain it away or distract myself or try not to be in it, if I don't do that, then there's a shift there. There's a possibility there. There's that potential. It's one of those big things that if you can just allow it and not connect any stories or whatever to it, just be like, it's there, it's fine, it's nothing. It doesn't mean anything, because it doesn't. That there's you're right there at a big shift possibility that can really change everything. So it's been pretty big, and I'm pretty excited. I'm going on a retreat in 3 weeks, thereabouts. And it's very interesting how these retreats, I've been to 3 in a year, or this will be my 3rd within a year. And the 2 that I've been to have been, let's just say, perfectly timed. And it appears, I think everything's perfectly timed at this point, because I see it every day. I see every day things, situations, whatever, handed to me that are right along with what's the whole moment is. It's ridiculous. I laugh a lot because I'm just like, I'm not even surprised anymore. It's beautiful. It's breadcrumbs to yourself. Just, it's okay. It's all okay. It's all fine. There's nothing you have to do. Not even more now. There's not one thing I have to do. But just be myself. Allow whatever my body's feeling. And there's no story that needs to be told about anything. No matter how deep-seated it feels, no matter how easy it would be to tell a story and explain it, stories are never helpful. I remember someone one time, someone I respect very much, was illustrating, okay, I'm at this point, which is the now. I can walk straight forward and experience the now. Oh, but if I want to get on a thought train, I'm just going to go walk behind myself or my starting point in a circle for a while. And then I'm right back where I was in the moment. Didn't get anywhere. Didn't do anything. Didn't change anything. Just went on a round trip behind me in my mind. And it's like if I was going to drive to New York from where I am, and I drive halfway, and then I'm sitting there in the moment, and then I decide, well, I'm going to drive all the way back and turn around and come all the way back again. I'm just going to I'm going to create a circle behind me. Did it get me closer to my destination? No. Did it get me closer to home? No. Did it get me closer anywhere? No. Did it do anything? Well, filled a lot of time. Set aside the fact that, a nice drive's nice, but it's just a metaphor. But anyway, that's just what I've been experiencing and what is clear to me at this point. What I know to be true based on what resonates. Nothing else. But I am not grabbing onto anything. I leave all of it open because I do also grab for certainty. I still grab it. I still get some. Not realizing it. Not doing it near as much as I used to. Thinking I'm not. Still happens. Still happens. So tuning in to any time you're Actually settling on something takes time because it's not always obvious. It can be very subtle and very deep-seated. And but have no fear. There is nothing to fear. There's never any harm. It's all so in your head and unnecessary. It's not necessary. And I know just as well as anyone that it's easy to it's a default almost to say it's hard. But I also understand that feeling because I felt it very viscerally so many times this week. But that's when it gets ridiculous and paradoxical because still all the gymnastics are in my head. 0% are necessary. It's crazy. It's really neat. It's never boring. The darkest times, I find some of the most gold there.